Good afternoon. It's David Saline and Chris Coley live from Drive. And today we have special guests with us, Larry Monroe. Welcome, Larry. And Bob Heybrock. Bob Heybrock owns Classic Imports in North Carolina. So welcome, Bob.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So one of the things we brought Bob on for today is there's a burning question I know that's out there for many shop owners right now, and that's talking about succession and exiting your business. And there's a lot to it because one, you got to get the business set up and ready to run where you can actually do a successful transfer and then still have the shop and make money for you, Bob. And I know you're starting into that process right now or taking some workshops to learn more about that. So tell us a little bit about your plans and what you're wanting to achieve.
Well, I'm going to be 65 this year, and I opened up my shop in 1990. And, now suddenly, 70 years old is really darn close. And so, and it's much more real to me to, realize or to think about and start planning. It's planning what I'm going to do. So the succession exit plan workshop that I just started this week, it really is shining a light on things that I'm finally finding that, I'm just even hiring a tech. Okay. I'm looking at them like, okay, I need this tech to help me get out of here. And that's really not something that I really considered before just this past week and starting this workshop. The other thing that was very interesting was the whole concept of maintaining shop ownership. They showed some graphs of how quickly a shop owner runs out of money when he sells the shop versus maintaining becoming an absentee owner. So it's helped me to get more solid ideas of what I want to do, and that is that I'm not going to sell the shop. Maybe when I'm 70 I will.
Oh no, yeah.
But because 70 is when my Social Security and all that stuff will work. So I got to work another 5.5 years. But I'm not going to wait 5.5 years before I can actually leave the shop. Right now, just kind of put the date out there of about 3.5 years from now. When I'm 68, I want to and will be able to be gone as much as I want to be gone. And maybe sooner, but certainly 3.5 years is just the timeline. And I've never really put that out there like that. And thanks to Larry, who's been, got me thinking more in that. And I've had a lot of courses, know a lot, but haven't really applied a lot. But now I'm starting to see the importance of applying more and more of those things. And once I get to that point, I know I'll get it done. So that's what, that's what I've enjoyed so far about the course, and looking forward to the second half of it next week.
That's great.
Cool.
Now, up to this point, you just said you've learned a lot, but haven't been applying a lot. And what is it about this context that makes it different for you?
I mean, as far as what it has to do with actually being gone and exiting the shop?
Yeah, and the how does that change your point of view as far as applying things?
Well, right now and all the times in the past, I would just let things go, because if they became critical, I knew that I could just do what needed to be done to handle them. I've got to look at it, and I am looking at it now, as that I'm not going to be monitoring these things because I won't be here. And so I've got to make sure that those things are going to get handled, when I'm not able to be here and handle them. So does that answer that's my answer.
Sure, that answers it perfectly.
Cool.
So, you as you're back over here, you're working with Larry and everything. I just want to talk about the relationship a little bit too between you and Larry, because now he's set up, he knows what your goals are and everything. Now, I'm sure Larry, he didn't push you a little bit to achieve them faster now, does he?
Yeah, that's a factor.
Yeah, and
I scramble a little bit more about an hour before I'm supposed to get that call.
Yeah, I've known Bob for many years, so his old tricks don't work with me.
But that's important too. And I feel extremely fortunate and honored that to be working with Larry, quite honestly.
Okay, great. And so when we're talking about trying to get that exit strategy, you're working over the next 5 years to make sure that you can exit the business and everything. What things are you finding now? I know you mentioned you have to find that tech, but what other areas of your shop are you looking at saying, if I'm not here, do I have to actually get this under control or systems put in and get it where I can monitor it remotely, but not have to be involved in the day to day?
Well, some of the things that we've covered in the first half so far of the of this, succession and exiting program, and that is, what jobs am I doing? When I on Wednesday afternoon, I'm looking through basically the chart of one of these days I'll learn how to turn that ringer off. I'm looking over there. Well, yeah, I don't have to be here to do that, and I don't have to be here for production to occur. I don't have to be here for quality control. It all can be handled. And the next morning I come in and realize that, what, I got to help my technician do some diagnosis, and it just hit me. I was like, there is stuff that I am needed for, and here 12 hours earlier, I was thinking, I'm good. All that stuff's handled. And so it's allowed me to, it's basically forced me to look a little more closely at that.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to say about Bob, I know I give him a hard time, which is, part of my job, but I have just noticed a shift in his viewpoint since I started working with him this time, because I've worked with him off and on in the past, where he seems to be definitely more interested in the executive hat. And the wake up call, I think, was, oh my gosh, 65 is just over the hill. It's not years away, 15 or 20 years. It's just down the road. And it caused a shift in his operating basis, and he's got some interesting viewpoints about volume and hiring, where it's just, okay, I need to turn on the tap, turn on the volume, which is what he does, and I need to find a tech, which is what he did, which is actually transitioning into being a service advisor. But it goes back to, Bob seems definitely much more motivated towards following the exit strategy, which he is learning more about, which requires him to download a lot of the things, get people in place. It's a lot of fun working with him because he has that viewpoint.
Thank you, Larry.
That brings up a question for me, Bob. As you are going through this succession and exit planning, I know that one of the key things is getting your people trained and turning over all those little things that you do in the shop. Was that something you ever had your attention on in the past, as far as putting things in writing, getting your shop policies down, playbook, that kind of stuff? Or is that something that you're just more aware of now that you're looking at your exit?
Well, both. I worked for a company in retail in the early 80s that had policies and procedures written up. I recall being at, at this business at 11 o'clock at night. Obviously, I was a manager, and I needed to know how to do something. And I went, and there was the procedure written up. So from and it was 10 years or 7 years later before I opened up my shop. So the concept of having written policies was always something that I realized the value of. And I have had plenty of wins through the years with policy write-ups. I got lackadaisical about writing them. Believe me, I have a bunch. When I would move my shop and things would change, it became a little bit of an overwhelm for me to go, oh, now I got to rewrite some of this stuff. And things, things went along, money was being made, cars were being fixed. It seemed like I got by without it. So that's really what made me a bit lackadaisical about it. But I've always known the power of the policies. And now again, that I'm not going to be around, that's when I realize, okay, this is what the policies are going to allow me to do, is to leave and know things will still be done.
That's great.
Cool.
Okay, and so just a minute ago, you made up a comment or Larry was talking about where you realized you needed a tech, you went out and hired a tech. And I know right now, this is one of the forefront things on everybody's mind. I need a tech. Can you talk to us about some of the steps you did to find that tech? Because you talked like it was a pretty easy process. Was it as simple as you just made it sound, or did it take a little more to find that tech?
I have always had, now granted, hey, I've been through techs, okay? So it's not like, every one of them that's ever walked in the doors is the greatest guy. So I've been through, but I have really not gone a tremendous amount of time to where I had to have a tech. I mean, my tech quit a little over a year ago. I went for about 2 weeks without a tech at all. But that's all I went. Okay. I just pulled one in and hired him on the spot. And my current service advisor / tech, he worked for me in the year 2000 for a bit, and he worked for me and left about 2.5 years ago. And I told Larry this. I honestly called him up and I said, I just wanted to let you know that I really enjoyed you working for me, and that if you're ever looking for a place to go, call me. Well, I think 8-9 days later, he calls me back, and I got off the phone with him like, well, maybe one day Steve will, come and work for me again. And 8-9 days later, he calls me. He says, Bob, he says, ever since our conversation, I've been thinking about this every day. I want to come work for you. And actually, Stephen and I, who's my service advisor, just a couple of hours ago, we've been brainstorming. I shot out a couple of Facebook, messages to a couple of people, a guy who's a tech in High Point, next neighboring town. I said, hey, somebody? And Steve's sitting there. He goes, wait a minute, I know a guy. And so he's just reached out to him. And so we're kind of doing a, grapevine on steroids, so to speak. And I hear, when guys say, hey, can't find anybody, I just kind of go, yeah, you're right. They're hard to find. I'm just lucky in that way. What can I say?
It's not luck.
No, it's not.
It's not luck. I just got to tell a story about Bob, because he's, when he decides on something, the physical universe starts complying in a lot of ways. And he has done a lot of workshops, and when I first started working with him, I started looking at goals, and he pulled up some of his notes. As a matter of fact, he sent me I don't know, 30 screenshots of notes showing some of his goals. And we really started looking at that from the viewpoint of the exit idea, because now it was very real to him. Yeah. And he started putting his attention on things like, well, I'm going to have to have a tech, a service advisor. And then he called this guy, and it turns out he was a tech, but he was interested in becoming a service advisor. And it was just kind of like, there wasn't a lot of sweat involved, but it was also very clear cut. This is what I need to do. And I think that was a big difference. As I mentioned, I've known Bob over the years, and he wasn't always that laser focused on various things that he wanted to accomplish. As in using his own words, he was kind of lackadaisical and not really all that motivated to solve some of the things. He didn't necessarily think there were big problems. But this time around, he really started looking at where he wanted to be in 4 or 5 years. And the technician almost virtually fell out of the sky. And but it does come back to goals that he had set years ago, and really being in the right frame of mind, the right viewpoint, and having enough intention as a result of that, when he decides he needed to find the next employee, he found the next employee.
So that brings up a question. So how many techs do you have? What are you targeting in terms of number of techs for your shop?
Well, I have only one right now. Well, and I can use the term 1.5 because Steven is, he's kind of doubling in the shop, so helping out there as well. So if there ever was a 1.5 tech that is, not a midget, then this is it.
And he's an A tech. He can
Yes.
he can do anything that comes in the door. So he's kind of straddling from the front and the back while we find the second technician to replace him entirely in the back.
Okay.
So yeah, so back to your question too, Chris, is so 2 full-time techs should give me what I want. I haven't really, my shop is 6 bays with, I just ordered a 4th lift. And so I don't know that it would really work with 3 full-time, but I'll look at that. And quite honestly, once I start looking a little more closely at the kind of numbers that I need to do, and that was something pretty cool that we covered yesterday in the workshop about paying your general manager out of operating expenses, and that's how you figure out what your gross needs to be, is what are you going to pay a general manager, and what kind of income have you got to have in order to pay that general manager out of operating expenses. So these are all things I've probably heard before, but they impinge more now because it's what I need.
Right. There's a lot to be said for getting the right training at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. And so we know your plan is to be able to be out of the shop within the next couple of years. Talk a little bit about what you want to do at that time.
Well, that has actually been probably most difficult. But I actually thought about this. And what's interesting is I am thinking about this more. And I honestly, last night, I was like, I'm going to get my what's called A&P airframe power plant certificate, which is about a 2-year program, full time. So I'm going to say that three and a half years for sure, I'm going to do that 2-year program, and I'm going to work on airplanes when I retire. Just general aviation, not going to work on jets, but it just kind of hit me. It's like, I like fixing stuff. I like airplanes, and I can do that, till mid 70s or later, more than likely. So yeah, that's just something that kind of hit me last night.
Very cool. And that actually brings up a key point, I think, that a lot of our audience needs to understand, is that just because you're getting to a point where you can exit your shop doesn't mean you have to stop working and go sit in front of the television or whatever. It's gives you the freedom to play whatever game you want to play, whether it's fixing airplanes or going fishing or whatever. And that's a personal choice that you make.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Flying airplanes too. So, it's not going to be just all all work in their plane.
Well, there you go.
I was just wondering if you've run that plan by Mary, if she knows that you're going to be opening up a aviation empire as your next stage in life.
Hey, we both entertain. There's the airport where my airplane is at is for sale, but I think there's a buyer now. But we entertained that idea. Mary was like, "Well, why don't we just buy the airport?"
That sounds like Mary. She could run her real estate business from one of the offices.
That's great. That's
and fly in prospects from other parts of the country. I like it. I'll help you with the game plan.
Larry, I can hear it now. We have those shop owners that when you call up to do your consulting call, that he's out on a test drive, and now you're going to hear he's out flying.
He's out on his plane.
Right. He's test flying a plane.
Yeah.
So one question I have for you, Bob, I know you've been around Drive and working with Drive for many, many years, and through different stages and stuff like that. Could you kind of walk our viewers through some of the key points that you've taken out from the years of, workshops and training and everything else? Some of the key points that made the biggest difference in your shop, because we have a very big range of shop owners that are with us today. And some of them are in your case where they're looking at retirement. Some of them are just starting out. So what would you tell them, and what was some of the biggest things that made a difference over the years for you?
Well, the biggest thing, of course, was my first introduction to the concept of just having, and organizing, any type of just workflow. Okay. I was the guy that was running around, with my hair on fire, and totally stressed out. Mary and I were just, we were ready just to throw lock the door and just leave town. And so that was my initial introduction to just actually having a workflow and assigning jobs to people. And from there, the finance, really knowing how to accumulate money, over the years, it's hard to say just one thing. There's so much that I've forgotten that I've changed, that it's hard to fathom what it used to be like. It's been since 1996, 97. So that's a good number of years.
Yeah.
Yep.
You definitely seem to have a fascination with KPIs. You definitely are a numbers guy.
Oh yeah, I went pretty crazy with the KPIs initially. In fact, it got overwhelming that I just quit. I quit messing with them. I got kind of crazy. I think Larry, you and I had discussion about them. I think in Arizona, and you're like, why are you doing all that? And it's like, because it's cool and it works. And
he's a technician, and he likes to mess with things. So
yeah.
But he's got a whole different viewpoint these days, and he's very much pays attention to the numbers that he needs to know. And going back to making money, those two are tied together.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's something, let me add, that Larry has helped me with, and that is, starting to look at things a little bit more about making money versus, and it's a tough call, because you got people. I got in this business to help people, and you got to mix the helping people with making money. And I still have difficulty with going, buddy, I can't help you because I can't make money helping you. And that's still a tough hurdle. And I guess you just kind of help enough people that, that you're still helping people, but you got to make money, got to make money so that you can help people tomorrow.
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly it. If you didn't make money, you do a favor to too many guys, too many people, you're not going to be there in a year to help the rest of the people.
Exactly.
Great.
Okay. Well, we are coming up at the end of our time, Bob. So thank you for joining us today on the show. Really appreciate your insight and how you're taking everything. And we wish you all the success on your exit from your business. And I know Larry will be there to make sure that you achieve that in the next few years. And then for everybody that's joined us today, you know what? Happy New Year. Happy New Year. And let's make 2022 the best year yet for your business. And look, if you need help, we have so much different ways here at Drive that we can help you. If you're not a client, call in, talk to us about our shop business analysis. But if you are a client, no matter what problem you have in your shop, if you'll talk to your consultant, open up to them and let them know what's going on, we'll find a solution and help you get through whatever's going on. So with that, thank you for joining us today, Larry and Bob and Chris. As always, good to be here with you, and let's make 2022 a great year.
All right, guys.
Plan.
I
Okay.
like it.